So we just went through a number of frameworks, and those frameworks gave us good guidance on how to operate our business. And operating our business means making decisions. And the good news is companies are considering social issues more and more when planning and conducting their business. The challenge is the number and complexity of those social issues. Just think about it. The sheer volume of issues each company impacts. Look at Campbell as an example. Food industry issues include GMOs, genetically modified organisms. Should they be included in food at all? Or should foods that contain them be labeled? Issues like nutrition and obesity. Are the company's products contributing to global health problems, or are they steering it toward better balanced diets? Food waste. Developed countries waste enormous amounts of food, and that has enormous impacts on their supply chain, their costs, and more. All of these are very difficult, very complex issues to solve. So where do you focus? How do you choose? Ultimately, that's a strategy question. And strategy is choice. Remember Michael Porter from week 1, our strategy guru? He says it pretty well. Strategy is choice. The essence of strategy is choosing what not to do. And that's our focus for this module, how to identify and prioritize social issues. It's one area where a clear concept and process have emerged, and both are being widely used. In fact, both have been accepted as standards for best practice. The concept is called materiality. It's an intimidating name for a very simple concept. Put simply, that concept means to make an informed judgment about something, you need the relevant information. You need material information. The terms materiality or material information have been used in a financial and accounting context for some time, and now they're being used in a sustainability and corporate responsibility context. As a financial term, materiality has a very specific legal definition. It's defined by the U.S. Supreme Court under U.S. federal securities law. Information is material when there is a substantial likelihood that the disclosure of the omitted fact would have been viewed by the reasonable investor as having significantly altered the total mix of information made available. To say all that more plainly, would a reasonable investor consider it important in deciding if company X is a good investment? Here's an example. A pharmaceutical company has been planning on the introduction of a new drug, but that drug performs poorly in clinical trials and now it's not going to market. Would a reasonable investor consider that important to his or her decision? They probably would. So that's material information. Another example would be if a supplier of a critical piece of technology told the company that they needed another 2 years to get that technology ready for market. So the company's market introduction is going to be delayed 2 years. Again, would a reasonable investor consider that important information? Would that influence their decision and their expectation regarding investment in that company? I think the answer is yes again, so that's a material event. Financially, there's little controversy or confusion about the definition of materiality. But from a corporate responsibility perspective, it's not exactly as settled. There's some different perspectives. A handful of organizations are working to advance the concept, and those organizations have different perspectives based on what they do. So let's review those perspectives. But while it's important to understand the differences, they won't slow us down. Overall, the concept remains the same. Let's look at one of those organizations, the Global Reporting Initiative, or GRI. GRI approaches materiality from the perspective of the stakeholder in sustainability reporting. The idea that stakeholders need to make informed judgments about companies from a sustainability perspective, so companies should publish or report on their sustainability impacts. We'll cover GRI in week 4, and GRI defines material issues. They use the term aspects. As material aspects are those that reflect the organization's significant economic, environmental, and social impacts, or that substantively influence the assessments and decisions of stakeholders. GRI has emerged as a leading reporting standard, and there are a couple of things to note regarding their view of materiality. The process of identifying material issues is a required step to meet their standard of reporting, and the content of the report must address those material issues. So it's pretty good evidence on the importance of the concept of materiality. In addition to GRI's stakeholder reporting perspective, there's also an investor's perspective, working to expand the scope of financial reporting to include sustainability issues. Let's look at 2 principal organizations with this investor's perspective on materiality. The Sustainability Accounting Standards Bureau, or SASB, is the first. SASB views materiality with an emphasis on the financial regulator's perspective. The idea that publicly traded companies will be required to report to investors on sustainability issues in mandatory filings with the SEC, including sustainability information and financial reports like the 10K statement. SASB standards utilize the financial reporting and legal definition of materiality we discussed a few moments ago. The other organization we should note here is the International Integrated Reporting Council, or IIRC. As I'm sure you're starting to realize, sustainability is full of acronyms. IIRC views materiality from the perspective of the investor, but with more of an emphasis on creating value over a longer term. The impacts of that long-term perspective on capital use decisions and ultimately on combining financial and non-financial reporting into one integrated report on company performance. IIRC defines a material issue as matter is material if it could substantively affect the organization's ability to create value in the short, medium, or long term. We said earlier, it's a simple concept with a name that can sound intimidating. Hopefully, after hearing these perspectives and the similarities, you can see it really is straightforward. So here's a summary. On the left, you have the financial perspective, and the question about what's a material issue really boils down to, would a reasonable shareholder consider it important in deciding if company X is a good financial investment? Pretty simple. On the right-hand side, there's a stakeholder perspective, and the question is, would a reasonable stakeholder consider it important in deciding if company X is a good corporate citizen? Materiality is a concept that's gained significant acceptance. That's because there are significant benefits to companies to applying the concept. Some of those benefits include, one, it drives strategy. It's a tool to decide, to make the choice that is strategy, what to do and what not to do. It meets the increasing requirement of investors and stakeholders. Helps both of them make informed decisions on what commitments management should be held accountable for. It can help reduce greenwashes or misdirection, that notion of bad cost marketing we talked about earlier. It creates internal alignment on strategic priorities. And there's a clear link to improved firm performance. In fact, studies show that when companies devote attention to managing material issues, they perform better. And if you think about that, it makes a ton of sense. These are things that are important to the organization. If you focus energy on those important things, you should perform better. Now that we've got a clear understanding and appreciation for the concept, the next step is to look at the process of defining a company's material issues. In addition to the new demand to identify the material issues themselves, companies are asked to disclose the process they use to define them. We mentioned earlier that GRI, the widely accepted standard for sustainability reporting, requires companies to address material issues and that those companies also provide an overview of the process they used. GRI's definition of what's involved in each step is quite detailed, and for good reason. For purposes of this course, we won't go into the deep specifics, but it's useful for us to take an overall view of the process GRI defines. Step 1 is to identify all the sustainability issues the company impacts. Step 2 is to prioritize them, and we're going to do this in a moment. Step 3 is to validate them, to make sure that the review is complete. This includes the scope of the issues, the boundaries between the company and its relationships, and the time frame. Step 4 is to review those issues with multiple diverse stakeholders, not just the company meeting alone in a boardroom. We said a couple of times that this concept of materiality is now very widely accepted by companies. They're following this process and they're communicating about it. But are they really? Let's take a look at one example. Campbell. We heard from Dave Stangus on values in week 1. We'll hear from him again later this week on how Campbell prioritized issues and defined its strategy. But in the meantime, we can see it for ourselves because Campbell uses the GRI reporting standards. And remember, GRI requires 2 things regarding materiality. 1, to define and report on material issues, and 2, to show us the process you went through to define those material issues. So let's see that disclosure. We can visit Campbell's website, and they do an excellent job of walking us through the process. In fact, they've included a section devoted to materiality. In the opening paragraph, the company cites the reasons we've discussed so far, using it to help define strategy and prioritization, and to guide communications and accountability. They talk about as step 1, identifying potential issues. Campbell cast a very wide net. They looked at peer companies, they reviewed their CR reports, conducted media audits, talked to stakeholder groups, including nonprofit organizations and investor groups. Step 2, they took that list and asked for input from diverse stakeholders. Specifically, they conducted a survey of employees, retailers, suppliers, NGOs, government agencies, and they also posted the survey publicly for additional perspectives. In step 3, they conducted focused interviews with key stakeholders, those people and organizations they know to have quality, informed perspectives. They wanted to talk to those folks in a little more detail. Step 4, Campbell's validated the issues with their internal CR steering committee and with key external stakeholders. And for all of this, they used a particular tool, and that tool is an important part of this process. It's called the materiality matrix. It's a graphic representation of the results of the process you go through to define your materiality issues. Let's first look at how the tool works, then we'll look at how Campbell used it. This illustration comes from a simple and useful McKinsey explanation of this model. On the vertical axis, we'll plot the importance to stakeholders. On the horizontal axis, we'll plot importance to the business. And let's assume this matrix is for a company in the oil and gas industry. We'll call it Illustration Oil Incorporated. Illustration faces a number of social and environmental issues. The materiality matrix plots each of those issues based on the results of a process similar to the one we just walked through for Campbell. So for example, issues like health and safety and obesity are high in importance on one axis, but lower on the other. As we make our way up to the upper right, issues like human rights, resource depletion, and climate change are likely to be identified as the higher priority issues for stakeholders and executives of an oil company. It's a clear summary of the judgments this company has made about what social issues are the highest priority for them, and as a result, where their strategy will focus. So the matrix communicates that these are the company's strategic choices. This is where we're going to work to impact. This is what we will be accountable for. And this is the result of a process that involved lots of informed, interested parties, not just us. So now let's look at Campbell's matrix. No big boxes here, but the matrix the same. The blue band includes issues they've identified as the key ones, or priority issues. So Campbell's has made their strategic choice. They've identified what social issues are the priorities for their corporate social responsibility efforts. They've done it via a multi-stakeholder process. They've followed voluntary standards, the Global Reporting Initiative, and they've communicated to us in an open and transparent way. Now, some may disagree with that prioritization. One example, maybe we believe deeply that food companies need to be pushed harder on responsible marketing. They're likely to disagree with Campbell's decision. They would have given it a higher priority. So it's important to say that the materiality process won't eliminate disagreements, especially from external issue groups who are very focused on their particular issue. But it can help lessen them. A well-run, high-quality, multi-stakeholder approach with truly diverse perspectives heard from and listened to will lead to better decisions, understood and largely supported by a wide range of important stakeholders. The result provides a stronger position for companies when the inevitable criticisms come. So yes, there is an important risk management benefit. But remember, the goal is to create economic and social value, and an effective materiality process will result in identifying the strategic focus that represents the best opportunity for the company's resources, people, and partners to collaborate on innovative solutions to create that value.